You know, when the online controversy first began to pick up momentum surrounding that other film, I saw some social media users saying that Latin Americans have become so united in condemning it that they finally fulfilled Simón Bolívar's dream. Simón Bolívar? Really? We're bringing Simón Bolívar into this? Dragging that other film and being funny while they do it. Anyway, on to the main event today, which is Brazilian. Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, I'm Japanese, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Today's video is a review and discussion of the Brazilian film I'm Still Here, the original title being Ainda Estou Aqui. Apologies for the horrible pronunciation, I don't know any Portuguese except for the song title Ai Se Eu Te Pego, because that song was everywhere and it's a bop. This video is timestamped by section, so if you would like to just skip ahead to only watch the regular movie review feedback, you can of course do that, but because of the subject matter of this film and also some of the other commotions surrounding it, the intro sections are a bit longer than usual. I'm also assuming that there will be more people watching this that are newer to my channel, so I feel like I want to take more time to work my way through my journey with this film. One of my Brazilian patrons had requested that I review this about a month ago, but at that point in time, I didn't know if the film was going to be released in cinemas near me, so I let them know that I didn't know when I would be able to watch it, so we were going to have to circle back to that. Originally, I was only going to do this as a Patreon exclusive review because I was worried about having to potentially censor myself because of the film's subject matter, but then I got really into this movie called Kneecap about this Irish group called Kneecap, and they are very loudly pro-Palestine, pro-indigenous languages, anti-colonialism, anti-English occupation. They pulled out of playing at South by Southwest because the event was sponsored by the US military.
What happened in Austin with that gig? Like, was that a stand you made? And I truly commend you guys for making a stand for what you believe in. But do you think that might affect you guys going forward, or is it worth making that stand?
I don't care if it's going to affect us coming forward. Like, the South by Southwest was just like, they was super sponsored by the US Army. They were doing talks about military weapons in the middle of a genocide that is being carried out by American weapons. It was a no-brainer. I don't give a fuck if it's going to affect us. There's right and there's wrong, and it would have been a wrong thing for us to do.
So I had found myself watching a lot of their interviews, and I had also watched an interview by Irish actor Liam Cunningham. I know him from movies like Northanger Abbey and The Little Princess. Many people know him from Game of Thrones, and this interview he did really stuck with me.
What are they going to do? Are they going to shoot me in the street for speaking up? They don't have any power. The only power that they have is the power we give them. You know the old saying, the king is only the king as long as the people think he's the king. As soon as they stop thinking it's the king, they're finished. I'm more concerned about the cowards who don't speak up. People who look at the television go, isn't that awful? Let's put on a cookery program. They're the people I find disappointing. I could have a very easy life and just enjoy being a reasonably successful actor and well-known and enjoy all the benefits, but my conscience wouldn't allow me.
And through all of these things, I came to the realization that I had far too many Irish icons in my ears, setting clear examples of what you should do when faced up against imperialism, so I went, no, I am in fact going to talk about this on YouTube. I'd already made that decision before the latest waves of controversy surrounding that other film flared up.
O Estado tem questões mais urgentes do que tentar remediar o passado?
No.
When I first became aware of I'm Still Here, the first thing I did was look up the basic information about the film, such as the premise and the talent. I saw the name Walter Salles, that's the director, and I immediately recognized his name because I remembered that he had directed this other movie I have watched called Diarios de Motocicleta. I got the book first, and I still have it, and I keep it on my desk. So I read the book because I knew I wanted to watch the film. It stars Gael Garcia Bernal, Mexico's finest. Imagine being a casting director for a living and getting in front of cameras and trying to act like you can't find capable Mexican actors for your horrible movie. Gael Garcia Bernal exists. Nobody believes you when you say ignorant things like that about Mexico's talent pool. That man will play characters that are Mexican, Cuban, Spanish, Chilean, and so on and so forth, and he eats everyone up every time. Great actor. He also supports Falasteen. And even if you haven't seen Diarios de Motocicleta or La Mala Educación, every film fan has seen Y Tu Mama Tambien, so you can't get away with addressing film fans and film professionals and expect them to believe that you can cannot find high-quality performers in Mexico. You are a deeply unserious person. Anyway, Diarios de Motocicleta was a great movie, so I thought, cool, I know Walter Salles is more than capable of doing good work, so already this is promising. And I read the basic premise of I'm Still Here, and it said that the film was about a historical figure named Eunice Paiva, a mother and activist coping with the forced disappearance of her husband, politician Rubens Paiva, during the military dictatorship in Brazil. And while I wasn't as familiar with this specific couple by name, when I read the words forced disappearance as well as military dictatorship, I went, oh, so this is a movie about Operation Condor. If you would like an official source for the empire's crimes across the global south, here is some information I pulled directly from the CIA's website. Operation Condor is a cooperative effort by security services of Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Brazil to counter terrorism and subversion. As it was first envisaged, the operation was to bring about an exchange of information among the participating services on subversive groups, but later discussions included consideration of mounting assassination operations abroad. At a meeting of Condor in December 1976, the principal subject of discussion was the planning of coordinated psychological warfare operations against leftist and radical groups. I know that you can find a lot of humor online, humor as a coping mechanism and a tactic in response to a lot of the racism, bigotry, and vitriol perpetuated against I'm Still Here or against the people who are critical of the film that must not be named. But if you momentarily put the jokes on pause, the pan-Latin American unity isn't something that's only relevant to being critical of a terrible film. I'm Still Here is a Brazilian film in the Portuguese language, but it is directly addressing something that is applicable to more or less all Latin American and Caribbean countries, as well as occupied territories. This is the case because Operation Condor was a criminal Western-backed operation of human rights violations that happened to more places than just Brazil. Just a couple of years ago, at the 2021 Oscars, there was a Chilean animated short film called Bestia that was nominated. It was a story that was largely inspired by a real-life war criminal who was part of the Chilean DINA police during the US-backed Pinochet dictatorship. Now, of course, this is a different narrative framing. The film Bestia was focusing on putting a spotlight on one of the perpetrators of this horrific violence, whereas Ainda Estou Aqui is focusing on people who are on the receiving end of this violence. But I bring this other film up to make the point that Ainda Estou Aqui has the capacity to emotionally and psychologically resonate with Latin American viewers across all of these other countries who are familiar with this period of history. Maybe they lived through that history themselves, or maybe they are now having to go through, oh, I don't know, the 21st century recycled tactics being deployed once again against them. Oh, and while we're still in this historical context section, I will share a quick list of some of the other things you should read up on if you would like to be more aware of what Latin American countries have had to deal with from the imperial core. Read up on the School of the Americas, which is a Department of Defense school, which has now rebranded to WINSEC because of how much bad publicity they have from decades of training numerous Latin American dictators and sadistic secret police types of people to commit crimes against humanity. You can also read up on the United Fruit Company, which has now rebranded to Chiquita Bananas. I haven't bought any bananas since I learned about them. I see the name Chiquita and I'm filled with rage. Read up on what the Coca-Cola Corporation has done in places like Mexico, and of course start reading up on many of the leaders that have been couped throughout Latin America in favor of Western-backed dictators. Read up on the policies of Salvador Allende of Chile, Jacobo Arbenz of Guatemala, Maurice Bishop of Grenada, and of course João Goulart of Brazil. I probably horribly butchered that pronunciation, so again, my apologies to all of the Portuguese speakers in the audience. There are so many other historical figures worthy of further study, but ultimately this is a movie review, so that should be enough of a beginner's introduction to anyone that went and watched Ainda Estou Aqui and would like to take their first steps of learning more things that you should know about when it comes to Latin America.
A tática do desaparecimento é uma das mais cruéis.
Now we are going to talk more specifics about the film Ainda Estou Aqui. First of all, lead actress Fernanda Torres. She's the one who has been getting a lot of praise from critics and nominations or even wins at award shows. All of that is fully deserved. Sidebar, can you imagine waking up in the morning and trying to make up lies about her or her team to try to raise your own chances in the award show circuit? That's very weird behavior. I don't recommend doing that. I mean, first of all, if you wake up in the morning and you think to yourself that you would like to fight Brazilians, I would suggest that maybe you reconsider that. Come to Brazil didn't become a meme out of nowhere, but if you really can't help yourself and you really feel as though you need to fight some Brazilians, maybe you could use some critical thinking skills and learn how to focus. More specifically, focus on whichever Brazilians keep trying to privatize the Amazon rainforest or are complicit in those schemes. At least that way, if you're putting in hard work to try to save the Amazon rainforest, you will be able to help the planet, make important progress in countering the climate crisis, and also you would be able to make friends with other Brazilians because there are lots of Brazilians who have been and continue to try to save the Amazon rainforest. That's what Fernanda Torres' character Eunice Paiva did in real life, and that seems like a much better way to use the extra energy some people seem to have, instead of using that energy to be a bigoted weirdo on Melissa Barrera's internet. But that's just me. What do I know? I don't wake up in the morning and decide to try to pick a fight with the entire country of Brazil. Okay, I promise we will focus solely on the film now, but if we're talking about Brazilian art, I had to use it as an excuse to remind people that there are indigenous environmental activists, not only in Brazil, but all over Latin America, that are fighting like hell to try to save the environment from corporations and capitalists that do nothing but pillage, destroy, and poison it. Oh, what's that? It sounded like someone said Chevron? Did anybody else hear that? I don't know, my ears must be acting up. Watching Ainda Estou Aqui was stressful. That's not because of the result of the quality of the film, but it's the subject matter that evokes stress. I think the only happy vibey moment I had was when they had people vibing to Jimmy Renda Se. Relatable, because that song is a bop.
So now if you'll excuse me, they're playing my jam.
Vai ficar andando no carro daquele playboy, não?
And after that, it was nothing but stress and emotional damage, at least for me. Now, if you've seen the film, you might be thinking, well, what are you talking about? You've got at least a solid half hour of the film before Rubens Paiva gets disappeared by the US-backed dictatorship. Well, here's what happened to me. I knew this film was about Operation Condor, so I could see right through what Walter Salles was doing. This man was showing us an incredibly loving family and getting the audience emotionally invested in how much they love each other, just so you can understand exactly what this US-backed regime destroyed. They are showing you one family, but it's symbolic of every person and family that was just trying to live their lives until a US-backed regime threw a wrecking ball through it. Watching a movie like Terrifier 3 was less stressful for me than watching Ainda Estou Aqui, because Terrifier 3 is not real. Art the Clown is a fictional cartoonish supervillain. He's also kind of camp. He's very silly. Nothing he does is real. What's happening in Ainda Estou Aqui is real. That really happened. So when you show me this loving family, the Paivas, and they're having parties, they're playing sports, they're going to the beach, just normal slice of life stuff, I was already a total emotional wreck. And I'm not being hyperbolic just because that's how internet slang works. During all of that happy stuff, all the loving family scenes they show you after that first military roadblock at the beginning of the film, I was already having to take deep breaths because I know what Operation Condor is. I know this family is about to be devastated, and I just started crying, and I did not stop for the rest of the film. The face was leaking all the way through the end credits. That's why when I came home, I had to wipe my face, make myself a cup of hojicha, and put Mamma Mia on to try to pull myself together so I could go through my notes and try to begin putting a review together. If you follow me on Letterboxd, you already know that I logged Mamma Mia immediately after Ainda Estou Aqui. It was an emergency. I needed to be in a place where the biggest problem you have in life is that you're trying to find your father, and the outcome is that you end up with 3 loving fathers, and nobody dies. One of the creative choices that Walter Salles made that I'm obsessed with because of how totally and utterly chef's kiss it was his use of the handheld Super 8 camera in that earlier portion of the film. The family has this little handheld camera that they use to document various parts of their life, and for one, I'm biased just in the fact that I love the look of shooting on film. Show me the texture of film grain and it just scratches an itch in my brain. But it's also a highly effective way of both conveying the time period of the film as well as putting the audience in a position to feel as though they're watching the home movies of a family. It's warm and loving because you really need to understand who this family is so you can have the proper emotional response to what eventually happens to them. Now, with all of the rave reviews and glowing feedback Fernanda Torres was getting, I was also waiting to see when they were going to really start showcasing what she could do. Because initially, when you're seeing this happy family material, there was a lot more focus put on the father, Rubens. Narratively speaking, this makes perfect sense to do because that's how you make the audience really feel the loss of him after he gets disappeared. Now, admittedly, a different filmmaker with a different approach could have chosen to not show him as much as they did and simply convey the impact of his loss by showing how his loved ones feel afterwards. But I thought it made perfect sense to give him that space in the beginning of the story. By the way, when they showed the photographs of the real Paiva family at the end during the credits, the resemblance between the real Rubens Paiva and the actor who played him, this resemblance was uncanny. Now, I don't think it's necessarily a requirement to only focus on hiring actors who physically resemble a real-life historical figure. First and foremost, you need an actor who can convey the emotional truth and essence of who that person is. But still, I was very surprised to see how close of a resemblance it ended up being. After Rubens is disappeared by, well, I'm assuming they were the SNI, although I don't think they outright mention them by name. This is when we get this seismic shift in the story, as well as the emotional wavelength the audience has been on up until that point, particularly if they don't have a clear grasp of the historical context. And this is when you start to see the award show nominated acting by Fernanda Torres. If you really break this down into the mechanics of what acting is and how you go about doing it effectively, particularly when it comes to acting on camera, it's very impressive, highly technical work. People who have never studied acting probably won't know any of that, of course. They just watch the film and they feel what she's making the audience feel. But she is having to operate on so many layers, because on the outward layer, you have her delivering lines of dialogue and the physical movements of where she is in the space of a scene, but so much of what she's having to convey is buried deep underneath that. These disgusting cops are in her house and she's being very polite and accommodating, but you as the audience can see and feel that she's terrified, devastated. She's trying to strategize how to survive in this situation and keep her family safe. I really want you to think for a moment. Imagine if someone came over, a friend perhaps, and you had to be polite and be a charming, welcoming host, but while you're doing that, you also need to tell them that you're extremely emotionally distressed, but you can't say the words to them or write them down. That's just a bit of a thought exercise to try to communicate how technical Fernanda's work is from this point moving forward for the next portion of the film, especially when she's having to deal with these disgusting cops in her house. But also a lot of that lingers for much longer in the film, particularly when she's trying to shield a lot of what's going on or the full magnitude of it from her children, particularly the younger ones. Sometimes, if you're a film fan who cares about following award shows ongoings, you find yourself frustrated by what you regard as undeserved nominations in this or that category. But let me just say, Miss Fernanda Torres completely earned every single nomination she has had. Do I know every nomination off the top of my head? No, I do not, but I don't need to. I still said what I said, and I mean it. One of the things I was most curious about for Ainda Estou Aqui before watching it was how much or how little of the horrors of being black bagged to one of those facilities would be shown on screen. I was thinking about how this is a very fine line to navigate, because on the one hand, you want to make sure that you are conveying the severity of the circumstances. You want to tell the truth about what went on, but you also don't want to batter the audience or do something that could come across to some viewers as exploitative, particularly if those viewers are folks that have survived being put into those facilities and interrogated in similar ways. And I was very impressed with the precision of how the film approached that. They were very purposeful in those details. When Eunice and her daughter are brought to the facility to be interrogated, the camera pans to the floor of the room she's in, and you can see the stains of blood splatter. When she's in her holding cell, she hears the person in the room next to her singing, and then you hear the voice of a nasty cop yelling at that prisoner to shut up, and they are also physically assaulted. You don't have to see it, because hearing it conveys it well enough. More than once, actually, she can hear the screams and pleading of other prisoners. Other times, it's when she's being transported to and from the the interrogation room, and while she's passing by other rooms, you get these quick glimpses of the horrible things that are happening in there. I haven't seen interviews about this film just yet, but I would imagine that a lot of time and consideration went into deciding how to go about showing these things and to what degree. I feel like the main frustration I had with watching this film wasn't actually the film itself, but it was more so my assumption about how I'm assuming some viewers will experience or respond to it. And what I mean by that is, I'm assuming that certain people outside of Latin America who don't already know about Operation Condor will watch this movie and they'll just go, oh, well, that's so horrible, but I'm glad it's over, instead of responding with, wow, my government is horrific for perpetuating this cycle of violence against Latin America and the Caribbean and a number of other places across the global south, because all of these struggles are connected. And I should probably take action and use a sledgehammer to dismantle the system that does this to people, because that system is still active today. I do want to be clear, I'm very happy for Brazilians who feel this joy at having a Brazilian film getting so much international success and accolades. But with all due respect, I don't think commercial success and critical acclaim is enough. If you don't watch this film and take it as a call to action, what exactly are we doing here? I really appreciate the scope of the film in regards to not only showing the disappearance of Rubens Paiva and the aftermath of trying to find him, not getting the answers, having to sell the house and move. The flash forward to 1996 is so important. And actually, the part where she finally gets her husband's death certificate and her immediate response was to smile. Oh my gosh, that part absolutely wrecked me. I don't know how I could even physically see the rest of the film with how much my face was leaking, because I instantly understood in that moment, even before she said it to the press, that she finally felt some sort of relief at having this official confirmation of what they already knew. I don't know how Brazil's legislative infrastructure works, but they showed a glimpse of the hassle that ensued immediately after her husband was gone and she wasn't able to do things like get money out of the bank account to pay the housekeeper. As if the violent trauma of what they did to her husband, her teenage daughter, the entire family, if all of that wasn't enough, now she has to deal with bureaucratic nonsense. It's just adding insult to injury. But Fernanda Torres is impeccable. That's why I immediately understood what that smile meant. Given how bleak the story is of everything that happened to this family and the countless other victims of this US-backed regime, it's a much-needed reprieve to see this flash forward to 1996, not only for the catharsis of Eunice and her family finally being able to get this death certificate, but also to show all that she accomplished despite the horrors she experienced. Getting her law degree at that point in her life, I think they said during the end credits that she graduated from university at age 48, but I'm not sure about the full timeline of those events exactly. But I was very glad to see them include a scene of her doing a lecture and speaking about her work of helping indigenous people, trying to protect the Amazon rainforest and trying to stop evil land grabbers. Because that, to me, embodied the most important purpose of the film. Taking action and teaching others to take action as well, to support indigenous people, protecting the Amazon rainforest and the environment in general, and stopping evil land grabbers. All three of those issues are just as relevant and important today as they were in 1996. I don't know what sort of success will come from the remainder of the award show season, but I do really hope that the legacy and greatest impact of Ainda Estou Aqui will not stay within the confines of show business. I hope it pushes people to take action in meaningful ways, just as Eunice Paiva did. If you haven't already seen it, I highly recommend watching Ainda Estou Aqui, but make sure you bring tissues. I made the mistake of not bringing any, and I was a mess for 2 hours.